always say the best thing that God can do for you is to give you strong parents.
Amen.
Parents, good health and strong parents who are on your side and looking out for you before you have enough sense to look out for yourself. And the nice thing was, they were so supportive. You knew you were going to go to school, you were going to study. I mean, I loved my dad to sign my report card, and anything that was not cool, he put a question mark. So, I mean, I was motivated at home. My dad told me, why don't you think about being a dentist like me? I mean, very supportive. Let you know that you can do it, whatever you want to do. I remember when he said one day, I make no difference between the boys and the girls in this family. If you want to be a doctor, you can be a doctor. I'll send you to medical school, okay? So God bless them, and I will thank them with my last breath. When I got my first job working in a swimming pool, in the locker room, and making about $16 a week, my dad said, and I thought I was rich, he said, where's mine? And he put his hand up. I realized I could not afford my lifestyle. The University of Wisconsin tried to put me out, but I was there to stay because I could not make any money. I couldn't run an elevator. How am I going to live? I got a good lifestyle. So thank God for Fred and Cecilia. Bye-bye. Amen.
She gotta light the candle, Dee Dee. So she hasn't done the candle. And since I am named after Frederick, all they had to do, we can't hear you. All they had to do was put an A on my name. Rika, move. And turn Frederick into Frederica. So I lit Fred's candle. All right. But I was my father's child, and I was spoiled rotten. He gave me anything I wanted. She didn't say yeah. That didn't always happen, right? And Max knows that, you know. But if it rained outside when I was in school, I knew all I had to do was to look out the window, and his car would be out there waiting for me because he felt he shouldn't get wet, I guess. She spoiled us rotten. Every teacher, every counselor, in every school we attended knew Fred and Cecilia Mobile. And when they walked in to that junior high school, or they walked into that high school, we could do absolutely no wrong. They knew every teacher we had, every class we took, and Betty can attest to that. And if they saw you even attempting to do something wrong, the teachers and the counselors knew who we were. And they made sure we had the right classes. They knew every one of us was going to college, and all 8 of us were college graduates. So, you know, we had a lot of support from all of our teachers, from the community, because of Fred and Sissy. They were very active. So I tell all of you out there, especially my young nieces and nephews, you have a standard to live up to. A true standard to live up to. Yes. Okay.
We don't want to burn all the candles out. It is wax. It is burning.
She's going to do town.
Okay, press this down.
Now we're going to do Dolores, right?
This down.
Dolores, Smith.
Dolores.
You got to press this first.
Do that for me.
I got it.
Did you guys decide, Shannon?
It's going to be Lauren.
All right.
It's going to be Lauren.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
There you go. Who's writing for the
Lauren.
Okay. The youngest of the grandchildren, huh?
Now you don't have to say anything. Okay. Just do this. You know how to do the trustees.
Her youngest.
I'm Lauren. I'm Dolores Smith's grandma. You can go here in the middle.
Yeah, go in the middle.
You can say a few words. Can you be briefer than an 80-year-old? I'm Dolores Smith's granddaughter. I'm Lauren. Michelle's granddaughter. And I just want to say, mother, daughter, whatever. Okay. I don't know. My grandma was a very special person. Everybody knows she was the oldest. And she was just a big influence in my life, and she taught me the true meaning of family, and that's why I'm glad we're all together here right now. Because she's smiling down, she has the old style in her hand, and she's smiling. Is Eddie?
Michael's here.
But I know I'm talking about the age matters. Yes, Eddie. Okay, Mike, sorry.
Let's see, what can I say about Pop? Oldest son, good provider.
You do?
Times there was some tough times going to college.
So that she can sign for math. Or look this way so she can sign for math. Okay.
Yeah, good provider. Some tough times that I had with him growing up. But they were good times. Helped give me a good foundation as to how I wanted to live my life. So Pop, still up there, looking down on me. Thanks for all you've done.
Yeah, I am. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Uncle Eddie was not known for being the most generous person in the world. The man would bleed a nickel dry. When we were kids, we went skiing, and I'll never forget, we were up at the counter, and he's telling me, scoot down because you're not 5 years old. I was like, I wouldn't even come to California until I was over 7. I don't know, like this anymore. We're not paying for that. I'm going like, are you kidding me? So I always had this impression that he was like this really parsimonious person, and things happen once you become an adult. You can actually talk to people and they become real people. Well, Uncle Eddie got sick. He had a stroke. And he would go and visit my father up in Riverbank. And so we would ride the train together. And he told me stories that he'd never really told anybody. He told me about when he marched into Italy. He said that they had boots that were so worn because he'd already come from another campaign. The soles were so thin, they stuck to his feet. They had no other footwear. They were so cold. He told me stories of growing up corn that they would put like chicken parts in the lake so that they could catch something that would come up to eat that. I mean, it's really interesting things. He didn't talk much about it after that because he decided to keep those things to himself. He was a very, very private individual. This just came as stunning news to me. And he told me, once he had his first stroke, he said, if anything happens to me, and there's another stroke, I do not want to live. Didn't want to be dependent on anybody. And he had told that to me and Claudia and my dad. And sure enough, he had another stroke and needed a catheter, and he didn't want to listen. That was it. So he was a strong man of his own conviction. He could say he probably had the first dime he ever made. But inside he was really, really integral. But you had to be an adult to actually see it. You just never saw him. Which is probably why it was hard to grow up with him.
Michael, come light the candle.
Michael, light the candle.
Michael, come light the candle.
Stephanie can light. Stephanie, let me light. Why don't you light it? Joe, right here.
My father, Joseph. I mean, for those of you who weren't on the East Coast, you didn't know the three brothers did used to hang out
Now she needs to
on the East Coast. They'd see a fair bit of one another, actually. What I want to add about Ed and about all of them, they were old school bobos. They were loud. Right? You knew when these brothers were together because there was just talk and laughter and shouting and screaming and arguing, shouting at one another all day and night long. I'm going to correct one thing about Ed. Ed was not that cheap, but Ed loved to argue and bargain, right? Right. Ed used to love to go to city auctions. He'd go to city auctions and try to bargain people down and get their best. And he bought automobiles. He'd show up at our house with city cars. And he's in the city going, y'all need a car? Wheels, man. I ran some wheels. He showed up one day with like a 20-foot Christmas tree, which would never fit in the house. Right? All right. So my dad, hard-working, driven man, had the Bobo tradition of being committed that his kids were going to college. He didn't care what profession, as long as you graduated college and started down some road that you were going to. And I think he loved being there for people. Like most Bobos, he was an outdoorsman. Nothing made him happier than going fishing, sitting on a boat, occasionally going hunting, and the whole range of things that generation of Bobo men did. He left this world far, far too soon, but we love and honor him all the time.
You're up.
I will. Oh, Bonnie, you have one too, Charmaine.
Getting awful hot over here. Candle burning.
Yeah, I know, I said. Hey guys, we were like 5 feet away from a incendiary device and causing
For your grandfather, too. For your grandfather.
Thank you guys.
All of you that know Al.
All right, Charmaine, why are you in the middle of my video here? Go ahead back then.
And he enjoyed his liquor. And he loved his family. I'm up again. You know these men well. My dad was a very unique individual. He had an incredible sense of destiny. My father being black married my mother who was white at a time when the Catholic Church banned them from being married. And my father and my mother were far too early in society, and it didn't work out. I have no regrets about that. I don't blame either one of them. Because once they finally separated, both found spouses that took us in as their own. Claudia has been my mother ever since. And Roy has been my dad ever since. So they were both very, very fortunate. My dad loved to fish. Getting my dad to go places was kind of hard, but Claudia kind of changed him and opened his eyes up that there was more to the life than just fishing. You know, he got to go to the Panama Canal, which he never really, it was never on his bucket list. And he just was just, he was open to new things with Claudia, things that you just didn't think your father would do. But one thing I always remembered was that when I graduated from medical school, he was so proud. And he never really said anything about me. He was upset because in college I flunked out of Russian. And he had some spy at the school that called him up and told him. And I was like, who cares? But when I graduated from medical school, he was just proud as punch. And he was so happy. And fishing was his life. He could have, in fact, now that he's dead, he is up there in a fishing hole, I'm telling you. He loved getting together with his brothers. They loved to drink. He loved to be gregarious and to entertain. And he just, if you wanted to come to Los Angeles, that's where you stayed. You stayed with my dad. And he treated you like you were royalty. It was wonderful. I mean, it was so nice to see. It was so nice to be part of that. It was just wonderful. And I miss him immensely. I really do. Shit's on the ingredients either.
I'm going to speak for Catherine because her children, Olivia and
Joseph
are not here tonight. A few years ago, many years ago, I went to an English teacher's school and I met a teacher who said, oh, I used to teach in Milwaukee. And I said, oh, I'm from Milwaukee. And he said, I taught at North Division in Milwaukee. And I said, I went to North Division in Milwaukee. He said, what's your name? I said, Bobo. And he said, one of my brightest students was Catherine Bobo. I said, that's my sister. Catherine Diane Bobo was born May 25th, 1943. She's the youngest in the clan. She was always very thoughtful, very caring, got her degree from Marquette University in philosophy, and she would love to be here on this occasion. It was just what she would just love. But unfortunately, she died in 1987. But we remember Catherine and her mother. All right.
Okay. Now we're going to do Randy. Are you up again?
Yeah.
Randy Bofa.
All right.
Randy. Oh.
Yeah, again, it's very sad. My older brother Randy passed away 2 years ago, and when I was a little kid, we had this generation of older cousins who we all looked up to who were about the same age. Charmaine, Michael, and Randy. They were the cool kids, the old kids, the one who kind of set the mold for the rest of us. Joseph Randall Bobo Jr. He's a brilliant guy, but took a hard road in a certain way, obviously, and never quite got things back on the right track. But he loved his brothers, he loved his family, he was always a brilliant guy. Got his MBA, he was the first African-American to debate management in Rockwell, was in charge of their system. He was a serious brother, and we miss him here.
You better.
You gotta put that torch on there, don't you?
Imagine if you're distracted. Okay. We want to have we want to take a few minutes here so I can talk because they can't hear you. I'm sorry.
No, you did not just walk in front of my camera.
Oh God. So Stephanie just wants to take a few minutes in silence. And just remember all the other friends, relatives who passed away over the last year.
No, this is wonderful. Good.
You got everybody crying.
I could go about a month's notice.
I'm going to tell everybody a story about Pretty Baby and Macintosh.
Pretty baby or pretty baby? Pretty. Are you up to
Pretty Baby and the Macintoshes.
just holding it on her?
Once upon a time. Once upon a time, I was your age. 8, 6, 5. And I remember. But the world was a lot different now. But I always imagined having a dinner party for my 8th great-grandparents. Their lives were so different from ours, but they were also very different from us. According to my DNA analysis, I'm 51% sub-Saharan African, 46% European, and 3% American Indian. Now, if I wanted to send an invitation to these great-grandparents, it would be difficult. 3 of them, we don't even know their names. 1 of them, at least, was illiterate. And only 1 left us a picture. And in that picture, you see a brown-skinned woman sitting in a chair with a long, dark dress on. On her right shoulder stands a boy, Frederick Douglass Noble. On her left shoulder stands another boy, Percy McIntosh. And sitting on her lap, what looks like a little girl in a white dress and curly hair is Chilcote. looks like a little girl because back in those days, little boys were physics until they were about 4 or 5 years old. But he was a boy. And her name was Pretty Mary. Now, according to the 1880 census, Pretty Mary was 32 years old. And she had 5 children. An 11-year-old daughter, 11-year-old son, sorry about that, a 7-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old daughter, whose names are very difficult to read if you look at the census report. Then there was Thomas J., 2 years old, and O.P., 1 year old. Well, Thomas J. was Jasper, and O.P. was Ophelia, and Lily Bell, some of you know Grandma Lily, was not yet born. What else did I want to tell you? Those last 3 children were fathered by a white farmer named Chris Moore. And I used to ask Grandma about her dad, and she said, he was a good daddy, and he loved his children. And I asked her also about Erskine Wilbur, who was father who was what? Father of Fred Douglas. And all she would ever say about Erskine Wilbur was he married Aunt McIntosh. Well, I could tell from the way she said it that the Macintoshes were probably a little better educationally and economically than the Baileys or the Moores. Grandma Lily never wanted to talk about Mississippi, and she didn't want to talk about her family, but she kept in touch with him. In 1942, her nephew, J.U., came to visit Aunt Lily in St. Paul. And I just love listening to him talk, because he didn't talk like people in St. Paul. He got into conversation about boxing, and he said, he doesn't fit. Well, I always thought that song, Joshua's in the Battle of Jericho, was about somebody who was just the right size for the job. You know, he fit. It never occurred to me that fit was the past tense of yeah. It was in, let me see.
Nani, you can give out the award.
Here we are on Sunday, June 21st, 1987. We were on our way to Little Rock to attend the General Assembly of the United Unitarian Association. And we decided we were going to ride down to Oklahoma, Mississippi for the day and see what we could find in terms of relatives or history. Well, we found out there's not much in Oklahoma, Mississippi on Sunday. But just as we were leaving town, I saw this old man sitting on the road. I said, that man's old enough to have young pretty man. So I got out of the car and went up to the porch. I said, did you know Pretty Mary? And I didn't see him. He's standing there. They called over a little boy. The little boy walked us over to our house. And we met William Burnside. Wow. Now I got to tell you about William Burnside. Because it turns out he had also married a McIntosh. So he was Erskine Bobo's brother-in-law. And he said Erskine Bobo had died in his eyes. And he took us to the cemetery. And he showed us Erskine Bobo's grave. And Erskine Bobo was buried right next to his mother. So the two graves are there in Oklahoma, Mississippi. But you couldn't read anything on these graves. It was just concrete slabs. But he also took us to the main street in Mississippi, and he showed us where Erskine Bobo had a pool hall, and Della McIntosh's wife had a millinery shop. Well, Erskine Bobo married this McIntosh girl and had 3 children. The oldest one was Melissa, then Betty, then Delma. Well, we also learned that Erskine Bobo's death certificate lists his mother as Melissa Mayer. So I figured Melissa must be named after her paternal grandmother. And Betty was named after her, let me see, Erskine Bobo's mother-in-law was Betty McIntosh. Well, Betty McIntosh. So I figured his daughter Betty Bobo must have been named after Betty McIntosh. And after growing up with siblings named Dolores Marie, Edward Charles, Joseph Randall, Albert Lawrence, Frederica Cecilia, Margarita Benita, Catherine Diana. I said, how did they come up with a name like Betty? But I find comfort in the fact that Betty has a family history. Now, Bill Burnside, he always called me his niece, and he referred to himself as Uncle Bill. Well, Bill Burnside also showed us his grave, and it said, Professor William Burnside. Well, I kept in touch with Bill Burnside until he died in 2004. Herbie McIntosh was his 3rd wife. So he had an earlier wife who had a daughter in Chicago. And when his health failed, she put him in a nursing home in Chicago. And I visited him there just before he died in 2004. And I knew he had this grave site in Oklahoma. So when his daughter sent me the memorial service program, I called her. I said, did you bury him in Oklahoma? She said, no, I buried him in Mississippi. I mean in Chicago, because he said, don't spend any money. So the end of the story is, I think there's an ancient grave site in Mississippi. And I brought you some pictures, well, at least one picture of Pretty Bailey's and also me and William Burnside standing on Erskine Bobo's grave. But I couldn't bring one for everybody, so it's just my generation and the next generation. So that's let's see, who's the next generation?
Me. Get them to my...
So Richard, he's asking for oh, that would be nice.
Take it to microphone down, I'll work through it. Okay. This is Betty talking to the sons at the end. Okay.